Well, we got a great episode today. We are absolutely thrilled to welcome fan favorite Jack McBain to the Clean Hits Hockey Podcast. This season, Jack has showcased his versatility, thriving at both center and wing while taking a big step forward offensively. His chemistry with teammates Dylan Gunther and Logan Cooley has been a standout, making him a key part of Utah's young and exciting core. And while I know I shouldn't be making this reference in 2025, we all know that McBain really knows how to bring the boom. Jack, it's great to have you on the show. How are you doing?
I'm good. Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. And I needed to point it out. I am wearing your roommate, Dylan Gunther's Costco Club shirt. I know we got one to you. I hope he's not hogging it all. So hope you enjoy that. Hope you guys are, stocking up still.
Those are awesome. As soon as I saw those, I knew I needed to get one. So, those are funny. Those are good.
Yep, awesome.
We're hoping to make one with you. We're toying out with some ideas and trying.
Yeah. Creative juices are flowing. We're trying to figure out a good one for you.
Send the ideas our way.
Yeah.
Okay,
all
awesome. Right. Jack, first season here in Utah, but for you, it's been a season where you're already ahead of the goal total you had last year in Arizona. So what would you say has been the biggest change in your game this year to reach that next level offensively?
You know what? I think early on I was having a lot of success doing a lot of simple things, just going to the net hard and kind of getting rebounds and just getting stuff on net. So I think it's stuff that I've been trying to do my whole career, and it was paying off, and will hopefully continue to pay off kind of through the second half of the season. So it's nothing crazy. It's nothing that I changed. I think just starting to see results for kind of hard work was great.
And you found some chemistry with some of this team's brightest young stars in Logan Cooley and then your roommate there in Dylan Gunther. Especially those two players who are really offense first, and you're somebody who can provide a little size and some grit to that line. What has it been like finding chemistry with those two, and what are you able to provide to that line?
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're both really talented players, and they bring a lot to the team, and both different, but really good skill, high end players. So I think obviously my game's a little bit different than theirs. They bring a size component and.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of more of a puck retrieving, and just a two-way game. So I think we all complemented each other really well. I mean, they're obviously fun to play with, and I think we did a really good job so far. It's unfortunate Dylan's out for a bit here, but no, it's been great playing with them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So what's next for you? What's the next part of your game that you have to add? And going into the year, are you the type of player who looks for benchmarks or goals that you set at the beginning of the year?
I wouldn't say there's any kind of like statistical benchmark that I'm trying to hit. I think I try to find positives and success through my game through other sources other than just points. I think I bring a lot more to the game than points, but obviously everybody wants to contribute like that. But no, I think for me it's just, continue to get bigger and stronger and faster. I think skating is something I've worked on, every year, every time I go home in the summer. That's my main focus. And I think I've come a long way in that, but just kind of rounding out my all around game and being more consistent night in, night out. But yeah, no, that's it.
Awesome.
Yeah, speaking of going back home, you've had a little bit of a long and winding journey to get to this point, to Salt Lake City, from getting drafted into the NHL right out of the OJHL, and then spending all 4 years at Boston College, and then having your rights traded just before signing with Arizona, and then ultimately the move to Utah. It's not a standard path to the NHL, I guess. What went into the decision for an Ontario kid to choose the NCAA route?
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Like, you kind of see all your buddies going to the OHL, and right after minor midget, I had a really good minor midget year, and I got drafted by Barrie, and I ended up going to their camp there, and Howard Chuck was the coach at the time, and the camp was awesome, and they had a pretty good team there. So it was definitely hard to kind of say no to that. And but I got the opportunity to go down and watch some Michigan games with my dad and kind of check out what school's all about. And I really fell in love with it since the first game I went down and watched. I think the hockey there is obviously unreal, and it's an experience kind of like unlike anything else, being able to go to school and get that degree. So at first it was kind of something more my parents wanted for me, and then it turned into something that I really loved, and it ended up being the best decision I ever made there.
Amazing. Even though you had to give Dale Howarchuk, of all people, bad news. How about that? He still ended up going to BC, which is amazing. What would you say is the best part about playing college hockey at BC? What stands out, like when you think back to your experience there, your 4 years there? What are some of the key highlights for you?
Oh man. Boston was an unreal city, and I got to play for Coach York there at BC, which was amazing. I mean, his last year coaching was my senior year, but no, I think you develop so many unreal friendships, and I still talk to all those guys every day. It really is an awesome experience. You get everything. You get to go to the football games, and you're playing really high level hockey, and it just allows you to develop your game over a longer period of time. And I think, for me, that's something that I probably needed. And, being able to mature on and off the ice, I think it was the perfect situation for me.
Awesome. And it lets you sign and get into the NHL pretty much right away, at least with Arizona. That was a little bit of a complicated maneuver as well. Anything you want to share with kind of how you ended up with the Coyotes and what went into that?
Yeah, I mean, I was at school there during COVID, and thought about kind of heading out after my junior year and signing with Minnesota, but I decided to go back for my senior year. We had a great group there. And decided to just go back, get my degree, and I ended up having a really good senior year, and a lot of options opened up, and I was able to talk to some other teams and stuff, and Arizona seemed like a great spot with some good opportunity, and I think Minnesota, I loved everything about that organization. They always treated me really well, but I thought the opportunity in Arizona was great, and I loved what they were trying to build there, and everything that Bill Armstrong had told me. So no, yeah, I made the decision to sign there, and it's been great.
Yeah, it's worked out. Yeah. It's really worked out. It's going well. So good on you, Jack. Good choice.
And point to be made here. You seem to have really good games against Minnesota. I always see that. So it's cool. It's nice to see. But I'm sure that it's been a big adjustment moving from Arizona to Utah. What's been the most surprising part about living in Utah and kind of setting your roots there?
I don't know. I think it's really been great. I think obviously the fans have been amazing at accepting it and really buying in. I think. It doesn't matter if we're playing on a Tuesday or a Friday, Saturday, whatever the game is, it's always full in there, and it's always loud. So, obviously we want to get a couple more wins at home and get some success for the fans, but, they're showing out every night, and it's been really good. But living wise, it's been nice. I think, it's a different pace of life than Arizona. It's a little bit different, but we're enjoying it. It's beautiful. You're in the mountains, and it's been really good. Yeah, we're loving it.
Yeah, I'm jealous. Saw the MTV Cribs style walkthrough. That was pretty sweet. So it looks like a nice little setup. You kind of mentioned it. This team is kind of the envy of the league. It's obviously got a lot of talent, a lot of youth. Still some work to be done. But you see it as great contracts, awesome team chemistry already. What do you see as the next necessary step to maybe being like a perennial playoff team?
Yeah, like you said, I think we're obviously a really young team, and we got a lot of young players. But I think obviously this offseason we made some big steps, and we got some big pieces. I think you look at Sergachev and Marino and guys like that. they're huge pieces for us. And, unfortunately going through a little bit of, some injury trouble at the moment, but I think we have a lot of really good pieces in place, and it kind of just comes down to almost more of a mindset and learning how to win those games when you're right in it at the end. And, that becoming the expectation. So it's been a lot like we've been talking about as a group the whole year. And, I think we're right there, we're right on the edge of it. And we just kind of got to get over that hump.
Yeah, I think we all feel it too. That's what's made it really exciting. Well, speaking of young players, we had somebody you're probably familiar with, Michael Kesselring, on our show last month, and he actually took some shots at you and Gunther in your hot tub, and said that there's no way anybody on the team would want to go near it, and that they should actually block it off with caution tape. And we just wanted to give you a chance to defend yourself, see if you got any dirt you'd like to share with us about Kes himself.
I don't know. I don't like to talk too much about him. I think, I let that. Ask him about that game. He came in over to BC. I think we won 11-1. Yeah, no, I don't know. The hot tub didn't last too long. It's out of commission right now, so nobody.
Oh, no.
But he wouldn't be invited anyway, so it doesn't.
Yeah. Well, any plumbers in the Salt Lake area, we got somebody who may need some hot tub repairs, so make sure you're reaching out to the Utah Hockey Club if you got all your credentials and your license number in order. McBain, one last thing I gotta bring up. You're kind of a fashion icon in the locker room, and I have to pop up the shirt. I mean, it is 90s action hero-esque, and I've been trying, and I cannot seem to get my t-shirts to look quite as good. So I got a clean hit shirt here, and I just want some tips. Then I'm going to try it myself after the show. We start with the sleeves. Do you start in on the sleeves and then deep neck? And do you do it on yourself while you're cutting it, or take it off first?
Oh, no, it's got to be off. And
okay.
The more you take off, the better. So
more off, the better. All right. So maybe I'll start kind
more
of
fabric,
where
not
the
body
circle
parts.
begins. Yeah. And I think I got the good idea. I'm going to give it a shot.
The important part.
And we'll have to post it and see how it turns out. We'll see if we got the stamp of approval. But otherwise, thank you so much for joining the show. We're so excited what you're bringing to the team. I mean, you're one of our favorites to kind of watch, and would absolutely love the chemistry you've brought with Gunther and Cooley. Trent on the show actually kind of wrote about this offseason of how nice that combo could be, and we're all pretty happy to see it kind of happening right before our eyes. But thanks again. Good luck with the rest of the season, and hopefully we'll catch you a little bit later.
Sorry, Dill was yelling in the back there. I missed that.
What did he say?
I don't know.
Oh, he's yelling. Oh, so you missed it? That's all right.
He can hop on. He can hop on and tell us what he's saying. What has he got? What's he got for us?
He's probably making fun of me here. We just finished a Monopoly game and I got killed. So
oh no.
But no, I appreciate you guys having me on there. It was good.
Thanks,
awesome.
Jack.
Thanks, Jack. Well, awesome stuff from Mr. McBain himself. Again, so thrilled that he joined us. Really stoked about this t-shirt tutorial. I've been struggling with it. Apparently, the more skin, the better. So make sure to keep your eyes peeled, because I may be modeling the McBain t-shirt style. So that will be coming out soon. But got some more stuff to talk about the Utah Hockey Club. The big thing is at cleanhitshockey.com, where you can find all of our written content. Mr. Trent over here, who is kind of the prospect and farm club guru of the crew, just recently put out a piece on the Tucson Roadrunners. He's been busy watching some of those games, kind of taking it all in and kind of understanding what's going on down there. You can kind of see our newest article again at cleanhitshockey.com, where he breaks down some performances of key players on the team. And in fact, Trent, you're going down there to actually catch a live game soon, right?
That's right. Yeah, not this weekend, but next. I'll be down there to watch them against the Abbotsford Canucks down the I-10 in the old Pueblo. I'll be down there with my wife and my kids to see the action live. We're gonna go to El Juego Canelo. We're gonna get some mini donuts at the Tucson Arena.
Nice.
We're gonna have the full Tucson experience. Yeah, it's gonna be great. Really looking forward to it. But yeah, we did. I did do some binge watching. I watched half a dozen games or so over the last couple weeks from different series. In the AHL, obviously they play weekend series to maximize gate revenue. So I watched 6 games against 3 teams and saw a lot of interesting stuff. On the one hand, not that surprising. On the other hand, a little bit that. There was really kind of 2 categories of players, I think, maybe even 3. There was Josh Doan, who is just a breed of his own. It completely looked like a different thing than anyone else on the ice for either team in any of the games. He was head and shoulders above. Any rookie hockey fan could watch that and think to themselves, who's 91? He looks different. So it's no wonder that he was named to the AHL All-Star game, and no wonder that he was called up to the Utah Hockey Club. I don't think he's got very many more, if any at all, AHL games to play. I think he's here to stay in the NHL. It doesn't look to me like a player who has anything left to prove down on that level. If he is in the AHL again, it's going to be because of a numbers game and not a development game, in my opinion. Second to Josh Doan, not to spoil the whole article, go there for details and read up on it. Artem Duda stood out big time as well. Really, really pleased to see how much progress he's made developmentally, given some of the big trials and tribulations he had to deal with.
Right.
He attempted to come over and play for the Maine Black Bears last season. He couldn't get his NCAA eligibility sorted out because of some professional games he'd played over in Russia. He couldn't get to the USHL either. He ultimately ended up playing for Canadian University at U Sports in a league with our Discord member, friend of the show, Aiden, who also plays in U Sports. So more from Aiden later in a future episode. Hopefully, you can talk about his experience in that league. But let's just say U Sports is a long way from the American Hockey League. So a guy who didn't play a whole lot of games and didn't play a whole lot of games at that elite level of development, jumping straight into the American Hockey League gave me a little bit of pause. I was a little bit nervous about what this might have resulted in from a development perspective in this player. Taking the time to really binge watch half a dozen games or so has alleviated all those concerns. I see a guy who is going to be a big part of the future of the team. It's no wonder that Bill Armstrong in his Sarah Valley interview called out Duda specifically as one of the key players down on the farm. And that definitely aligned with what I saw in the eye test as I was watching games for the Roadrunners. So check out that article. I'll dive into exactly what I liked about Duda's game, some of the things I liked and didn't like about Igor Sokolov's game, as well as Maximilian Zuber and several other of the key prospects down on the farm for Tucson.
Awesome.
Yeah, and you even did a Duda profile this off season. Again, that's all going to be at cleanhitshockey.com if you want to take more of a deeper dive on some of the prospects, even the individual players. We're going to be releasing our midseason grades starting next week. You can see who made the cut, who has improved their grade from our preseason grades, who's excelled, and all of our thoughts on the players of the team of the Utah Hockey Club. Again, cleanhitshockey.com. That's where you can find all of our written content and kind of one of the better places to find some information on the team's prospects. Again, we're all kind of draft nerds. That's kind of how we all met and how we even came about to start this whole community. And like Trent mentioned, we do have a fantastic Discord as well that is going to be at discord.cleanhitshockey.com. If you want to join in, we got tons of game day threads, prospect threads, tons of different channels for you to interact. In fact, our friends Flo and some of our Aussie friends actually made it all the way out from all the way around the world and have been able to get some great advice of their trip in Salt Lake City through that community. So been really fun to kind of watch that grow and build. So if you're not in there,
Yeah, and that community is super useful for anybody looking to visit on a Utah Hockey Club themed
Right.
trip. I know it was valuable for Corey when he flew from Toronto to Salt Lake City and took in a couple of games of the Utah Hockey Club. The members there have been super great as my family's planning our big trip up to Salt Lake City, as we're going to visit all these national parks on the way up and then all these national parks on the way down and take in a Utah Hockey Club game against the hated, miserable, scum of the earth Anaheim Ducks up there.
Picture perfect. Couldn't write that one any better.
But the Discord has been amazing. People giving you great tips on where to stay, which trails to hike, where to eat, everything like that. So anyone who's a visitor to the SLC community would be well served to join up our absolutely free Discord. It's easy to join, very welcoming. It's the sort of civil place on the internet to discuss sports, hockey, and all things Utah.
Yep. Agreed. Well, kind of pivoting over to that Frank Saravalli interview. If you did not catch that, make sure you catch it on Daily Faceoff. Frank Saravalli got some time with General Manager Bill Armstrong, and Bill kind of hinted that there may be some trades, and not just small pieces, but maybe some big trades down the road. Corey, do you want to kind of touch on what you heard and maybe some, pieces that you hear kind of working around that Daily Faceoff area?
Sure. And I mean, this is something we've kind of talked about for a while, right? And they mentioned it in the Frank interview as well, where we have so many picks, so many prospects, where we're going to get capped out here. You can only have so many players. You can have 50 signed players. You can have 90 on your reserve list. We've done such a good job drafting signing college free agents, where there's just not going to be enough spaces for all these players. So, I think we're going to see another Sergachev style trade here at one point, where we moved out 4 pieces for him. And I think we could see that here as well. 7 weeks out from the March 7th NHL trade deadline. And you see some of the names are floating out there. And Frank was connecting the dots to the drama of what's happening in Vancouver right now. Yeah. Maybe reached another level last night with the spat between Rick Tocchet and JT Miller. But JT Miller's name has been out there for a while. Elias Pettersson's name has been out there for a while. Both interesting players. A bit of an age gap between the two, with Pettersson being 26 and Miller 31. But Miller had 100-something points last year. Pettersson had 89 last year, 100-something the year before that. Both centers. So if you can have an opportunity to bring in a style of player like either of those two, and they're both producers, and they're both they're different though, right? Because one's a little bit more physical, one's a little bit more offensively gifted. But you look at the Bill Armstrong comments and continuing to add players to the core that matches the rest of the core. Sergachev, same age as Clayton Keller, Lawson Gross, Nick Schmaltz. Elias Pettersson is also the same age as that group.
Yeah. And, I found that interesting too, Corey. He mentions that almost front and center, almost every time that he's talking about the players that they're looking for. He's like, if they're in the right age group, if they're in the right age group. And so I think just by design and deductive reasoning, I do think that JT Miller would not be the one that we're looking at in Vancouver. And in full transparency, I think that the locker room that we have had in the players have said this going back to the days in Arizona, the locker room that we have right now gels so well together. So I think it would be more beneficial for a player like Elias Pettersson to join that kind of vibe, where he was in kind of a hostile environment, maybe not the most welcoming, and then he's in a pressure cooker at Vancouver, to go to Utah, where it's a newer market, a much more tighter knit locker room that could potentially build you up, versus introducing a player like JT Miller, who's going to try to strong arm everything. And those players are valuable. I'm not saying that that's wrong. There are teams that could absolutely use that. And I think to a degree, Utah could as well. But I don't know if we need that much of a presence in JT Miller. And I've beat this drum ad nauseum, and I apologize to you guys again in advance. But I said the same thing with Askarov. I said, if a player like this comes available, you absolutely have to at least be having the conversations. It would just to see how close you can actually get. Askarov on a lesser degree, because he wasn't proven at the NHL level, but you already see he's kind of what everybody thought he was going to be in San Jose, and behind a weak defense, right? So I think when a player like Elias Pettersson becomes available, I would hope that we are one of the finalists. Even where we're at right now, I know we've lost a couple games, but we're still right in the thick of it. I think Corey mentioned it. I mean, we're still just 6 points out of a playoff spot, and we've only played half the year, and the other teams around us, including Vancouver, are struggling as well. So we are by no means out of it, and it could be to the point where we'd be looking at a move, maybe a significant move, sooner rather than later.
And there's nothing wrong with having 2 number 1 centers, right? We have one in Logan Cooley, or we will have very soon. He's a budding number 1 center. He's still only 20 years old, youngest player on the team. Elias Pettersson is a number 1 center. We talked about the offensive production that he's had in Vancouver. I think of a team like the Pittsburgh Penguins, who had multiple number 1 centers and the 3 Stanley Cups that they won over the last 10, 15 years. Any concerns related to Elias Pettersson's? I don't have any concerns about, the locker room issues or anything, and that's all rumored, so who knows what's true. The contract, though. So Vancouver's coming up to a bit of a pressure point here when the new no move clause kicks in on July 1st. They're already facing that with JT Miller. But Elias Pettersson also has the 5th highest cap hit in the league. I believe it's 11.5 or 11.6. We can definitely accommodate that. We got all kinds of space. We got even more when you put Shea Weber on the LTIR. But that's a big ticket to bring in. Are there any concerns about bringing in someone that's going to eat up 10, 15% of the cap?
Yeah,
No,
and it gets a little interesting because we do have a lot of highly touted prospects, specifically on the wing, that are coming up that one day are going to need new contracts. And, if all these guys hit, like Daniil Boot and Iginla, and we're starting to kind of stack these contracts, that's when you do think there may be a little bit of a cap crunch. But this is the point where you do have that space and you can build around this foundation. So I think it would probably be easier for Armstrong to actually be able to build around, a newly signed Cooley with a newly signed Gunther, Keller on his contract, and bringing Pettersson in with that, rather than being closer to having to figure out the Iginla and Boots and Simachevs of the world without having that other big piece on the roster. That's kind of my initial impression, but that's kind of like a kick the can down the road and figure it out later.
I agree with that, Brad. I think that's a problem for another day. It's a good problem to have. And in fact, I kind of like the idea that his contract is seen is maybe a bit too large. Maybe it gives people pause. I think that's a great thing for Utah because it could drive down the acquisition cost. You know what I mean? I think that if he was a free agent, he'd get paid a whole heck of a lot more than that. I think if we wanted to build the center depth through free agency, we'd have to sign worse contracts than the one he's got. So I think that the fact that there may be a little bit less of an appetite to bring in Pettersson at that price is a really good thing for us in terms of keeping the total cost of assets traded out down a bit. So I look at it as an advantage. I mean, I wish he had an extra $1 million in AAV, bring that acquisition cost down even a little bit more, limit the number of teams that could potentially even fit him under the cap, and really corner the market for who can put together an appealing enough offer to bring a player like that in. So personally, no issues with that at all.
And really, one last thing, we don't have any bad contracts. I mean, pull up Puckpedia and look at every team. Every team has at least one. I can't pinpoint. I'd be nitpicking at our worst contract. So even, any team that goes to acquire Elias Pettersson is going to have that same mentality that Brad has. Acquire the player now, then kick the can down the road. If it becomes a problem, then that's a good problem to have. Like Trent said, it just means all your draft picks are hitting, but that's a hell of a projection, right? So you grab the sure thing that you can right now if you have the opportunity to, especially since your team is in one of the best states contractually wise.
And if we want to connect one more dot here, why was Bill Armstrong scouting Abbotsford in December? Now, it was Abbotsford in Laval, close to Ottawa, where the World Juniors was, and Bill Armstrong was there. So maybe a bit of a road trip on a day off, but I don't know. a little unusual. And he wasn't the only general manager there. We had Kyle Dubas there from the Pittsburgh Penguins, and we had there was one other general manager there. Who was it?
The Bruins.
Sweeney,
right?
yeah.
Don Sweeney was there too.
Yeah.
And Boston is another team that needs a top center. I don't know why Pittsburgh is there. I don't think they even know, but Boston needs a number one center as well. So
Dubas being the liaison. Hey, I'm just here to help in any way I can. We need anything. Yeah.
Now, speaking of, what would you think the cost of bringing Pedersen to this team would be?
So
I do think it's really easy to think like, why can't Chicago just like beat out any offer that any other team can make, because they have so many prospects and young prospects. I mean, Utah does too, Anaheim as well. But why does it seem like Utah maybe a little bit more connected to this player than maybe some other teams that you would kind of initially think would be?
So the way I look, and this is a question open forum from me to you guys. We're dealing with the same general manager and management group that traded Bo Horvat. Now, I know that there is a significant difference in skill there, but Bo Horvat had more of the intangibles. I believe he was on a much better contract, obviously.
And was the captain too.
The captain of the team, still very young. Is there much of a delta between the return that could between Elias Pettersson and Bo Horvat? I mean, what is it much more significant than they got for Bo Horvat? Because they got the Islanders' best prospect, but their best prospect is not like a top 30 prospect in the league, right? There was
No.
And then I believe they got another first round pick. I believe it was protected, if I remember correctly. I might be butchering this, but it wasn't a huge return for Bo Horvat. And so if you think about it, it's the same management group that's going to, again, be trading another young center. We may be overestimating how much it's really going to cost, especially to Trent's point. He's got a hell of a contract that we'd have to acquire.
I think there's a key difference to where the organization was at that time in Vancouver versus where they are now.
Fair.
I think the expectations are a little bit different.
Fair.
I think, but even then, they sort of surprised the world a little bit, the hockey world. They got the kind of return people somewhat expected, which was picks and prospects heavy. But then they turn around and flip some of that for Roenick, the defenseman, and people were wondering, what's this? Why move those pieces out for a similarly aged piece as Horvat? Why are we rearranging deck chairs? And I think that we're going to see something similar in this case. I think that they're probably not looking for picks and prospects heavy returns unless they're planning on just flipping those assets for more roster players. I think that Rick Tocchet wants to win. I think that Patrick Allvin wants to win. I think that the Vancouver Canucks are not looking to rebuild and tear it down here. So I think they're probably looking for more prime-aged assets in return with picks and prospects potentially as an offset for the value delta. And they're looking for cap space too. I would expect that if they deal Pettersson, they want some decent, young, cost-controlled assets back. And I would guess that they want some cap space back so that they can make a big splash in the offseason, either via trade or free agent signing.
So,
And
go ahead. So, I mean, that kind of fits to Brad's point. That makes us an extremely ideal candidate for them. If they're not looking for a specific player from us, we don't have to say like, we like player X, but they may not like player X as much as we do. We may just be able to send them a couple unsigned prospects that teams are getting. I mean, Frank Saravalli said it recently on a DFO live segment where he said, not only does he feel that we're going to be trading some of these assets, but teams are actually calling on these assets. So that's a great point, Trent. That would make us an ideal fit for them because, much like the Roenick trade, what their thought process there was is they needed a partner for their best player. And there's an obvious rift. Something's got to give here with the JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. So what are they going to do to, fill that void? They're going to take those prospects and trade for a guy that they want.
And two more dots to connect here. We also heard Elliot Friedman say Vancouver is not opposed to trading, I guess, either of these players within the Western Conference. And you see that a lot with the star players where teams don't want to trade within their own division, especially. But so if they're willing to trade within the West, that works for Utah because we are in the West. And then I also wonder now, maybe Kyle Dubas is involved in this because Jim Rutherford and Rick Tocchet, before they arrived in Vancouver, they were with Pittsburgh. Maybe there's some pieces left over there that in a potential three-way trade, Pittsburgh can send some pieces to Vancouver with assets that they could get from a third-party team that could be Utah potentially, where Pettersson goes to Utah, parts from Pittsburgh go to Vancouver, and it goes from there.
Yeah, no, that's
a great
really
point.
Interesting.
Pittsburgh
Like
would be
Chris
looking
Letang?
probably for futures. Yeah. Oh no, I was thinking more like Brian Rust.
Yeah, Russ
or
is where my head
potentially
went.
maybe even Malkin.
Malkin in Vancouver would be nuts.
I've always wanted to see him get that opportunity to be a number one center by himself, not behind Crosby. But
so late though.
it's hard to rationalize trading a 26-year-old Pettersson for like how old is
38-year-old.
Malkin? Yeah, that's a tough sell.
There'd have to be a little bit more involved, and maybe
Yeah,
some
wouldn't be one
liners
for one,
from
but-
Utah heading. Three-way trades have to have assets going all the way around.
Rust is an
we could
ideal pocket player, though. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think Brian Rust would be very appealing to them. He's an older player, but he's not much older than JT Miller, and he brings a little bit of that same kind of spunk and energy and playoff grit to the table that Miller has, that Vancouver seems to be hesitant to lose and potentially moving Miller out.
Great point.
Huh.
Now,
Hot
I think the other thing there is that, you got to look at your opportunity cost, right? So we're talking about moving out some major league assets for Pettersson. It's going to hurt a lot, whatever the trade turns out to be. Odds are some of your favorite young players on the club and in the system are headed out. So know that, Utah fans, as you're wishing for this big blockbuster trade, it's going to hurt a lot. You won't come out unscathed if it happens. But if you want to kind of lay up a little bit, if you don't want to swing for the fences and you want to go for your next best alternative, things kind of drop off pretty significantly from there. Like when you look at some of the other rumored names, I mean, probably one of the more appealing names that's bubbled up recently that would be a good candidate short of Pettersson would be like Casey Middlestat. And that's quite a drop from Pettersson to Middlestat, right? Or you're looking at like guys who are maybe a little bit older, in their 30s, and suddenly it gets a little less appealing. Trocheck or somebody like this, if New York sells, or if you look at UFAs, maybe you hand a huge ticket to somebody like Sam Bennett, but does he play the style of game that's going to age well? He's a little bit older too. And then suddenly you're looking at a really long, really expensive contract. Things get a little dicey on the center front after Elias Pettersson. So I think when you're looking at other potential options for filling that need at center, he's kind of in a league of his own, I guess, is the situation that I'm trying to convey here. Much like Mikhail Sergachev, these opportunities come along very rarely. And I think you need to stand up at attention and take them seriously and really do some soul searching when they do come about to see if there's any way to make it work, because it can really alter the trajectory of the franchise. I mean, look at the impact that Sergachev has had in Utah against all odds with the serious injuries to the blue line. He's kind of held the team in the fight largely by himself. So something to think about.
Yeah. I think, though, you mentioned there, some fan favorites would be traded, but I think it's pretty safe to say Dylan Guenther, Logan Cooley, those guys aren't going anywhere.
Clayton Keller, Sergachev,
the core players, they're not going to move. Beyond Pettersson, I think the one other name, especially that's out there in the rumor mill, is Dylan Cousins. I mean, he's been connected to Detroit. Buffalo needs to, I don't know what Buffalo needs to do. This is going to be 14 years now without playoffs, but they just need players who are going to be there for a long time. I was surprised the other day to see Jason Zucker, and he's had a good season there, but he's interested in staying. You don't get that a lot in Buffalo where people want to hang around. So that'll give them one veteran player to stick around. But beyond that, they need players who are going to be there long term. And you look at Dylan Cousins, he's got the contract extension already. So, I mean, that fits for Buffalo, but his age also fits with the comments that Bill Armstrong made and him fitting with the rest of the core here in Utah.
Yeah. You have to be careful with those kind of players, though, because he's had one good season, one really, really good season. And so they are going to try to sell high on him, even though he's not having that high of a year, but they're going to attribute that to just how bad of a team they've been. So he scares me a little bit, but I agree with you. He's another interesting name. And he signed to a good contract. I think he's 7x7 or something like that. 8x7 it could be. And the potential's there. It's just, it scares me a little bit more than say an Elias Pettersson would. I would much rather pour the assets out it would take, even though it might hurt to get Elias Pettersson, than not pour enough assets out to where it doesn't hurt and take the risk on Cousins.
Yeah, we know we're getting a 90-point player in Pettersson, right? Where Dylan Cousins, it's still a bit of a mystery box.
Sure, absolutely.
And then the middle ground there is probably Middlestat, who's like a year younger than Pettersson, I think. He's a little bit more proven than Cousins is, but he definitely doesn't have the high watermark that Pettersson does. And he's, been an effective player in two different teams. Not effective enough, I guess, if his name's coming up in the rumor mill. But
doesn't seem like a Bill Armstrong player to me. I just always think back to the combine and him. What was it? He couldn't do a pull-up, right?
Yeah.
I guess that it was Sam Bennett, and he just lifted the cup last spring. So.
Yeah, I'm sure that's changed. I've never been a huge Middlestat fan. I've just not. And I mean, you look at his numbers this year; it's nothing crazy.
There's also the idea that Middlestat had that wake-up call after being moved, and we still haven't seen too much improvements. On the flip side, with somebody like Dylan Cousins, and one reason why I'm more intrigued with that, it kind of is twofold. One, I like the idea of the cap there. I think you have a little bit of savings for a guy who's potentially could become a very, very good 2C, which really feels like that missing piece of the current core roster. It also means that we are kind of bowing our heads and tipping our caps to Logan Cooley to be that exalted number 1C for the team, and kind of giving him the keys for that, where if he brought in EP40, it kind of changes maybe what that dynamic looks like down the road. The other thing is, we've seen this with high prospects that take a little bit of time to develop. Sometimes those trades end up being very good for them, especially players from Buffalo who excel when they get moved to Florida.
Isn't that weird how that happens?
But Sam Bennett's a perfect example too, because Sam Bennett was really kind of underperforming in Calgary in those years, and then he moves the Florida where there's more talent around him, and you see him explode offensively. And let's put it this way too: a very good 2C really just needs to be kind of producing in that 50 to 60 point range. We don't, you don't necessarily need the 100 points out of them as long as they're bringing a lot of elements to their game.
Why stop with Bennett? Why stop with Bennett? You've got Ryan O'Reilly and Sam Reinhart too. I mean, how many of these examples do you need from them? Right?
Montour,
the Jack Eichel guy's pretty good.
Jack Eichel's pretty decent.
Forgot about him.
Which brings me to the question that I have with Buffalo and why I have a hard time even really speculating. Like, it's fun to speculate about Vancouver and the different pieces that could go there and how that might all come together. With Buffalo, I'm intrigued by Cousins, but then the second I put my thinking cap on and I try to cook up a return, I just get stuck immediately because they need everything, they need nothing. What would they even want? Like, I can't even begin to imagine what's going through their heads as they're evaluating potential returns for a player like this. Like, but what do you really need other than for everything that's just not working to start working, for crying out loud? So I really don't know how to put together a trade with Buffalo. I don't even know how to begin. I don't know what they are. I don't know where they're going. I don't know what they need other than maybe like to burn some sage and do some smudging, maybe some other kind of ritualistic cleansing there, juice cleanse. I don't know what they need in Buffalo, but I can't figure it out.
I'll always have a soft spot for Kevin Adams. Kevin Adams, just to give you guys a little fun story. He played for the Coyotes briefly. I have two soft spots for him. One, he got us Radim Verbata, and Radim Verbata was one of my favorite players. But two, I was just a little pipsqueak, and I was banging on the boards. And he used to do this thing. It was so weird where he would get down really low. If I ever get a chance to talk to him, I want to bring this up. But he would get down really low and then just do this giant leap, and he would bring his knees up on ice skates, and it was just incredible. And he'd always turn around and look at the audience, and everybody was like, "Okay, dude." And I was like, "That was so cool." And so he like chucked me a puck. I'm like, "Yeah, that's my guy forever." And then he got traded for Radim Verbata. But yeah, I always have a soft spot for him. That being said, I think this is a great trial run. I don't want to say trial run. That's so demeaning. I think this was a great spot for Hidden to get a start in management. Just do not think it's a good fit for him there. I think he might need to go on and be an assistant general manager somewhere else and then take another stab at being a general manager again in the future. I think it's time to move on from both sides.
Yeah, I think if Bill Armstrong makes a trade with Kevin Adams, he's going to be the next door on that Grim Reaper meme that we showed in the
right. And he gave me a puck. I don't want to do that to the guy, but I might have to.
Oh, you mean this one?
That's the one.
Right. But honestly, I think that might be true for any GM and Kevin Adams. The next trade is probably going to be that regardless of who the GM is, who the other team is, and what's traded. So
that's Mark Bergevin, Jim Benning, and Pierre Dorion out of a job now. And then I don't think Brisebois is going anywhere, but Bill's knocking on the door there, as you can see.
Yeah,
but that door may be coming completely off for Vancouver if Peterson trade ends up happening. Trade deadline is March 7th, I believe.
March 7th.
It feels a little bit later this year. It's usually end of February, but there is that big Four Nations tournament break. That's going to be a lot of fun. We'll do some coverage on that for sure. Obviously, we're going to be kind of keeping our ears and checking out the tea leaves as we're getting closer to the trade deadline. So make sure you're kind of tuned into what Clean Hits is bringing you. We're going to try to, We'll be putting on a little bit of our investigation caps and see what we can find. But definitely tune into Clean Hits Hockey, the podcast. Make sure you're following us on Twitter, X, Instagram. Get into that Discord. Find us on YouTube. Like, subscribe, comment. All that stuff really does help, especially leaving reviews on any of the places you are listening to this podcast. That is a huge help. And if you want to help support the podcast, you can always find awesome shirts like this Dylan Gunther one, our Clean Hits one at shop.cleanhitshockey.com, or you can find all of our written content at cleanhitshockey.com. Again, lots of ways to help support this community. We want to keep it growing. We want to keep hearing from you. We want to keep engaging with you. And we can't wait to meet some of you when we are making our way up to Utah. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Some of us will be making it up there this spring. Otherwise, anything else we want to chat about before we sign off, guys?
Just one more comment from Bill Armstrong from that Frank interview. Almost two deadlines this year in Bill's mind, where teams will be preparing for the March 7th deadline, but also kind of getting their ducks in a row before the break for the Four Nations. So we could see some deals sooner than we expect here.
Yeah, because traditionally, it's funny because the trade deadlines really changed over recent years. Before, it was kind of like maybe one trade would happen and then everything would happen in the actual trade deadline day and the day before. Now it seems like it starts happening a little bit earlier, kind of spreads out, and usually the big ones happen before the actual trade deadline day. So definitely,
and Jim Rutherford in Vancouver is one of the teams that likes to go early.
Yes,
so would you say there's a chance that we start seeing Elias Peterson or JT Miller held out for trade-related reasons in January? 3 months holding them out?
Yeah. Bill Armstrong's got a chuckle every time he sees that. He's like, I was the guy that made that.
He copywrote it. It's from my heard. You're not allowed to say trade-related reasons without paying a dime to good old BA.
Right. I don't mess with trademarks, just FYI. Anyway.
We got a big last half-ish, a little bit less than half of the season to really kind of see what this team is made of, see if they can make that playoff push too. Again, our midseason ranks will be coming out, our report cards, so make sure you tune in for that as well. But otherwise, have a fantastic weekend, everybody. Have a fantastic week, and we'll catch you next time.
See you later.
We know we running it now. Watch the game change.